everyone. Today I'm going to share an oil pastel tutorial of how I painted this woman who carrying water from my memories of my childhood in India. And for your ease of drawing, I will also post a link in the video description for all the materials as well as a traceable link for you to copy it from.
I am starting off by blocking the foliage in the background with the blues, browns, and some grays as well. And this point of time, I am not incorporating a lot of greens other than a very dark bluish green. The reason being, I want to put in the shadows first, and for the shadows, I prefer colors like dull blues and grays. And once I put in the shadows, then I will come back with the lighter areas. Like my usual paintings and drawings, where I closely follow a reference picture or several reference pictures, kind of collaborate, bringing them together collectively. This one I did more or less from my memories. So let me tell you a little bit background about this painting. This time of the year, where I was born and brought up in India, in West Bengal, the eastern part of India, has the New Year. And obviously, since I am far away from my birthland and my friends and family from there, my childhood, so often like I feel nostalgic about those times, those things, those images that I have. So those images are kind of strongly set in my mind. So I thought of painting something to refresh my nostalgia, to do a painting just from my memories and imagination and not really closely follow a reference picture. Now for the figure of the woman, I did look at a few pictures online of women carrying water, which is a very common sight in rural parts of West Bengal in India, where people, or rather women, carry water from wells or ponds and take it back home where they store it for drinking and other kind of uses. Not so much probably nowadays. Everywhere there is a good system of water and available nowadays, but even in my childhood I have seen a lot of these things. So that's kind of very close to my memories from the rural parts of Bengal, where my grandmother and grandfather lived. So back to the painting, you can see that I'm still blocking in grays, blues, and a little bit of yellows and greens here and there to do the foliage. Now a lot of time I am faced by this question, like what color you're putting where. As you can see that I'm putting some grays and blues in over here at the background because I want kind of a misty look that is going backwards. And what I personally feel, or my experience has taught me, is that the colors really does not matter. What matters is the values, the lights and darks and the contrast. So you can use several different sets of colors for the same purpose, and if your values are correct, the lights are light enough, the darks are dark enough, and the contrasts are right, and the reflections, light, shadows, all these things are right, then if you use a different set of colors, it really would not matter. But what I mean is that right now you can see that for the ground area, or rather the dirt path and the branches of tree, the longer limbs, I am using a flesh tint color, which is not a very commonly used color for trees and dirt roads. But what you will see that using a combination of browns and purple and some grays, even blues, and some ochre, yellow ochre, you will see that all of those come together, and once the values are corrected, these unusual colors, it will not look very bad. Maybe at this point of time it's looking a little ugly and very unnatural, but once it comes together, once all the values are corrected, all the lights and darks and contrasts are in place, then it will all come together very nicely. So that is one advice I constantly give to whoever asks me about colors and color mixing is that do not focus about colors. Worry more about the lights and darks and the values. If you had the values right, everything would look right. So I'm adding some shadows, I'm adding some highlights with white. And once I add those highlights, I am going to come back with the darker colors of purple and gray, sometimes even dark Van Dyke brown, and create the lights and darks. So this is a dirt path, so obviously it will have a lot of texture. So as you are coming towards the viewer's eyes, I will make it more texture. I will have the dirt path have more texture, and as you are moving away from the viewer's eyes towards the far away part of the dirt path, you will see less of texture, and that is obviously the same thing goes on in the entire painting. The more closer you are, the more detail you get. The further you are, the more misty and hazier look it is. And that's a general thing in all kinds of landscape painting, that the farther away things are a little blurry, and the closer you get to see more details. Now I'm adding more details to the branches, and with the details I'm adding browns and blues for creating the shadows, and for green, some green for the foliage, and some ochre for the ground shadows. For the further shadows and the foliage, I'm adding some shadows with blue. You can see that I'm extending some of the shadows with blue and purple on the dirt road as well, which are supposed to designate kind of the look of the shadows of the limbs of trees on the dirt path. And thereby you can see that in this painting I have not used any kind of solvent for blending, no odorless mineral spirit or any kind of oil or anything. All I have used is either straight up pastel on top of oil pastel on top of oil pastel, or at the most I have used a rag. I always prefer using rags as my blending tools. Not only it is the most cost effective and most easily available in my house, I just use cut up old t-shirts for my rags. So obviously it is always most available in my house, and I find that it works the best for me as a blending tool. I don't like to get the color on my fingers, because for oil pastels they're kind of sticky and have a residue on your fingers. So I'd rather have something on my finger to blend it. Whereas with the finger I get the right amount of pressure and blending. So the rags wrapped around my finger is the best blending tool for me. But I have always shown other blending tools in my video of 8 ways to blend oil pastel. You can check it out and you will know what are the different tools and methods you can use for blending oil pastel. I will link that video in the video description below as well. So adding more green in the background on the top part of the tree limbs to designate more of the leaf. Adding more darks on the branches. Once I add more dark and kind of get that blended in, I will come back with lots of white highlights on the branches. This will kind of give the look of peeling branches, kind of like you see in some of the oaks and birch trees. It is very common in India as well. I've seen lots of trees have that peeling bark look on the trunk. So that is what I'm trying to create over here. Like I said, I did not use much of a reference photo for this painting. So often on I'm kind of going into my imagination. So it might not be very logically right, but it looks very right to me. Now I'm adding some lighter greens and yellows for the smaller leaves. And the final details I'll leave till the end. And keep on working on different areas. The more closer you're to the viewer eyes, there is more of the details. Finishing up all the area around the figure of the woman before I get started on the figure. Adding some clumps of bushes, and for that I'm using browns, olive green, lots of blues and purples. Excuse me. As I have previously mentioned that the colors I'm using very not so commonly used colors for grounds, but in the end everything will come together. And that is what I want to highlight, that colors really don't matter. As long as you get the shadows and lights and darks right, it will come together all right. So adding a few more touches and then go on to the woman's body. I'm first adding the base tone with a burnt sienna and a little bit of red on it, and then adding a lot of shadows with dark brown, which is I think a Van Dyke brown, and a lot of purple. I will even add a little bit of black for the very darks. And once I've added all the darks, then I'm coming back with yellow ochre and the flesh tint to get the lights light and also to get it all blended together to look like a smooth skin. In India, especially in rural parts of it, tropical parts of India, because of the high heat and also because of the heavy sun, a lot of women have pretty dark colored skin. That is what I've tried to portray over here. Then comes the earthen pot. The earthen pot is also very common in India because it is supposed to keep the water cool inside the earthen pot. So in hot summers, it's very useful. And for that, I'm using brown, or rather burnt sienna, dark brown, orange, purple, and even some amount of flesh tint for the lighter areas. For again the hands, I'm doing dark browns for the darks, mid-tone with the burnt sienna, and then coming back with ochre to blend it all together. The woman is wearing a sari and a blouse. Right now I'm working on the blouse part where I'm creating the darks and lights with purple, magenta, and dark blue. And the lights I'm creating by adding and blending a little bit of flesh tint. And the woman is wearing a sari, which is like a 9 yards of cloth that is wrapped around the body very gracefully. It's very common attire in India. If you're not aware of it, you can look it up in the internet what the sari is like. And it's very elegant looking when it's worn right. And obviously, rural parts of India, women always wear saris. So adding some more details in the drapes of the cloth, or rather the sari and the body, but I'm not going a lot crazy about the details because it's just a 9 by 12 drawing and painting, and in such a little drawing I don't want to add too much detail and make it cumbersome looking, overworked. So just adding some lights, darks, highlights, and getting it done. Doing the head and the hair, although it's going to be black hair, I'm starting off with burnt sienna, then followed by Van Dyke brown, and then actually adding blues and blacks. And again on top of them, I will come back with some grays and some white highlights to make it look complete. A loose bun is what I have tried to portray for the hair. That is also very common in rural parts of India amongst women, very careless, casual look. Adding in some of the darks, like I always keep harping about it, the darks, getting the darks dark and the lights light. So adding some final details on the leaves with small tiny leaves of yellow and green. And that is what brings the painting together at the very end. So we're still working on those, getting their contrast really hyped up. Some of the dirt path, adding a little more texture with browns and purples. And as it is closer to the viewer's eye, it should have more texture than further away from the viewer's eye. So the last few touches is adding the texture in. And once I'm done with the dirt path, I will come back to the bush on the right hand side and add in some darks and lights in the bush as well to again hype up the contrast, get the lights light enough, the darks surrounding it dark enough. The contrast is, I think, gives the painting the killer look. So that's all about this painting. I have linked all the materials used in the video description as well as a traceable link in the video description for you to copy it from. If you like the painting, give me a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of this kind of painting from the memory, let me know. I will do more of them. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can keep watching every video every Wednesday and Friday.